Dear Patrik and Kaspar, can you answer Ines Barkidija's question, how can we assess China's self-image as a peacemaker in the context of Russia's war in Ukraine?
So China claims neutrality, but its rhetoric and action shows a clear tilt toward Russia. China has avoided calling what's happening in Ukraine an invasion or even a war. Instead, it refers to it as a conflict or a crisis, so the Ukraine crisis.
我要重申，中国不是乌克兰危机的制造者，也不是当事方。
China also hasn't condemned Russia's aggression and often points the finger at the US and NATO for provoking Russia. At the same time, China doesn't repeat all of Russia's narratives. So, for example, it hasn't recognized the annexed territories in Ukraine as Russian, and it also has distanced itself from Russian nuclear threats. China leans toward Russia, but still maintains enough distance to try to protect its global image.
Bilateral Sino-Russian trade has increased from about 147 billion US dollars in 2021 to about 245 billion dollars in 2024, so a very substantial increase. Particularly important there is that China is buying a lot of Russian oil, and Russian oil exports are key to the state revenue of Russia. On the other side of that ledger is that Russia is importing a lot of technology from China, despite Western sanctions. So China is the main hub for Russia to evade Western sanctions. We see that Xi Jinping, the president of China, and Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, have regular meetings. Xi also shows a lot of respect to Putin, and this is very important to Putin and to Russia in general, because it really allows them to show that they're not as isolated as the West would like them to be, and that Russia is still great power that matters on the international stage, that is respected on the international stage. And we also see substantial cooperation between China and Russia inside the UN, where China often votes in alignment with Russian interests in that institution as well. Militarily, we have seen an increase in joint Chinese and Russian military exercises. But at the same time, China and Russia are not military allies, right? They're not formal treaty allies. And that is also, for instance, why we haven't seen Chinese military forces fight alongside Russia in Ukraine. That's also why we likely won't see Russian forces fighting alongside China potentially in the future if China would get into a military conflict, say, on Taiwan or in the South China Sea.
China hasn't openly sent weapons like missiles or tanks, but behind the scenes, China has played a key role in Russia's war effort by supplying semiconductors, drone parts, microchips, typical dual-use items that have both a civilian use and a military use. And there have also been reports of Chinese companies helping Russia to develop and test attack drones, and some may have been used in Ukraine.
What is clear is that China is the key enabler of Russia's war.
China's foreign minister has reportedly told the European Union's top diplomat that Beijing cannot accept Russia losing its war against Ukraine because it could allow the U.S. to turn its full attention to China.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me greatly. China really looks at the war in Ukraine through the lens of its broader geopolitical competition with the US. From Beijing's perspective, the US would really exploit a Russian defeat in Ukraine to contain China more effectively, to tighten the thumbscrews on China and to essentially limit China's rise, to inhibit its rise to superpower status. Moreover, China is worried that the Russian defeat in Ukraine could lead to political instability inside Russia. It could, for instance, lead to the fall of the Putin regime, or in a bad scenario for China, a pro-Western government coming to power in Moscow. It could also lead to prolonged political instability in Russia, which would be bad for Beijing for at least two reasons. Number one, it would likely amplify American power at the expense of Chinese power in the world. And number two, it could create all kinds of problems, instability along the Russian-Chinese border, which is an extremely long border, more than 4,000 kilometers, and all kinds of issues there could seep into China. There are definitely scenarios that Beijing seems to take very seriously, even though they may not be very likely.